I never thought a single evening could change my life so drastically. It was a crisp autumn night in Seattle, the kind where the air is tinged with the scent of rain and the streets glisten under the city lights. I had just wrapped up a busy day at the design studio where I worked, feeling both exhausted and satisfied with the progress on my latest project. I was looking forward to a quiet evening at home with my partner, Alex. Alex and I had been together for 5 years. We met at a coffee shop where he spilled his latte on my sketchbook, and from that clumsy beginning blossomed a relationship filled with laughter, shared dreams, and countless memories. He was an entrepreneur, always brimming with ideas, some more feasible than others, but his passion was infectious. We lived together in a cozy apartment overlooking Puget Sound, a place that felt like our little sanctuary amidst the bustle of the city. That evening, I picked up takeout from our favorite Thai place on my way home. Alex had texted earlier, saying he had a surprise for me. My curiosity was piqued, and I felt a flutter of excitement as I climbed the stairs to our apartment. When I opened the door, the lights were dimmed, and soft music played in the background. Alex greeted me with a warm smile and a glass of wine. "What's all this?" I asked, grinning. "Just thought we could use a special night," he replied, taking the food from my hands and setting it on the kitchen counter. "I have some news." We settled on the couch, and he told me about a new business opportunity, a startup that he believed could revolutionize sustainable energy. His eyes sparkled as he spoke, hands animated, and I couldn't help but feel proud of his ambition. Yet, there was a hint of something else in his demeanor, a subtle tension I couldn't quite place. "That's amazing," I said, squeezing his hand. "But it sounds like a big undertaking. Are you sure about this?" He hesitated for a moment. "It's a risk, but one worth taking. I've been thinking about it a lot." I sensed his apprehension and tried to reassure him. "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." We spent the rest of the evening talking about his plans, the potential challenges, and how exciting the future could be. Eventually, we drifted into lighter topics, and the night felt like any other, comfortable and familiar. Later, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed Alex standing by the window, gazing out into the night. "Are you coming to bed?" I asked. "In a bit," he replied softly. "Just need to clear my head." I nodded, not wanting to press him. We all have those moments when our thoughts need space. I fell asleep quickly, the day's weariness catching up with me. When I awoke in the middle of the night, reaching out instinctively to his side of the bed, I found it empty. The sheets were cold, and a sense of unease settled over me. I got up and checked the living room, the kitchen, even the small balcony, but he was nowhere to be found. I called his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Trying not to panic, I told myself he might have gone for a late-night walk to clear his mind. It wouldn't be the first time. I sent him a text, "Hey, where are you? Everything okay?" and waited for a response that never came. Morning arrived, gray and drizzling, but Alex still hadn't returned. Anxiety gnawed at me as I tried calling him again, with the same result. I decided to reach out to his closest friend, Mark. "Hey Mark, have you heard from Alex?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not since yesterday," he replied. "Why? Is everything all right?" I hesitated. "He wasn't here when I woke up, and I can't reach him." "That's odd," Mark said, sounding concerned. "Let me try contacting him." I'll let you know if I hear anything. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere. By evening, there was still no word from Alex. I contacted his family, but they hadn't heard from him either. Worry turned into fear as possibilities raced through my mind. Had something happened to him? Was he in trouble? On the second day of his absence, I decided to file a missing person report. The police were sympathetic, but explained that adults sometimes leave on their own accord. They assured me they would keep an eye out, but didn't seem overly concerned. Desperate for answers, I began searching for any clues. I checked his emails, something I'd never done before, feeling a pang of guilt. There were messages about the startup, discussions with potential investors, nothing alarming. But then I noticed several large withdrawals from our joint bank account over the past few days, totaling nearly $100,000. My heart pounded as I stared at the numbers. This didn't make sense. We had been saving that money for a down payment on a house, a dream we'd often talked about. I called the bank, but they were tight-lipped, citing privacy policies. "Ma'am, I can only discuss your personal accounts," the representative said politely but firmly. "But it's a joint account," I insisted. "I need to know where this money went." "I'm sorry, but without the account holder's consent, I can't provide that information." Frustrated and confused, I hung up. The realization hit me like a cold wave. Alex had taken the money and disappeared. But why? Had something gone wrong with his business plans? Was he in some kind of trouble he hadn't shared with me? I reached out to Mark again, sharing what I'd discovered. "This doesn't sound like him," Mark said, bewildered. "Maybe there's an explanation. Or maybe I didn't know him as well as I thought," I murmured. The third day dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. Sleep evaded me, and my thoughts spiraled between worry and betrayal. Part of me feared he was hurt somewhere, needing help. Another part wondered if he'd left intentionally, choosing to cut ties without explanation. Friends and family tried to comfort me, offering reassurances and helping in any way they could. But their words felt hollow. How could I reconcile the man I loved with the possibility that he had abandoned me, taking our future with him? By the end of the week, the reality settled in. Alex was gone, and I had no answers. The police had no leads, and his phone remained off. I was left with a gaping void and a multitude of questions. In the days that followed, I began the slow process of picking up the pieces. I contacted a lawyer to understand my options regarding the missing funds. I leaned on my support network, accepting that I couldn't navigate this alone. Reflecting on our last evening together, I replayed every moment, searching for signs I might have missed. Perhaps there were hints of his inner turmoil, masked by his usual enthusiasm. I realized how much I had taken for granted, assuming that our open communication meant I knew everything he was facing. The experience left me with hard-earned lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the importance of truly connecting with those we love. While I may never understand why Alex chose to leave the way he did, I resolved to move forward, carrying the memories of the good times, but not letting the pain define me. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a pale glow across the bedroom. I blinked awake, reaching instinctively for Alex's side of the bed. My hand met cool sheets and an empty space. For a moment, confusion clouded my mind. Then the memories of the previous night rushed back, Alex leaving abruptly, saying he needed some fresh air, and the hours of waiting that followed. I sat up slowly, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Maybe he had slept on the couch. I walked into the living room, but it was empty. The kitchen was silent, no coffee brewing, no signs of his usual morning routine. I checked my phone, no messages, no missed calls. "Alex?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness. No response. I tried to quell the rising tide of anxiety. Perhaps he'd gone out early for a run or to clear his head. It wouldn't be the first time he'd gone for a morning jog without waking me. I decided to get ready for the day, hoping he'd return soon with an apologetic smile and a plausible explanation. As I showered and dressed, my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe he was overwhelmed with his new business venture. The startup had been consuming much of his time and energy lately. We'd talked about it over dinner just a few nights ago, his excitement tinged with a hint of stress that I hadn't seen before. By the time I was ready to leave for work, there was still no sign of him. I sent a text, "Hey, haven't seen you this morning. Everything okay?" The message remained unread. At the office, I tried to focus on my projects, but concentration eluded me. Colors blurred on my screen, and design concepts seemed trivial compared to the gnawing worry that something was wrong. By midday, I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out to make a call. First, I dialed his number again. Straight to voicemail. "Alex, please call me when you get this. I'm getting worried." I tried to keep my tone light, but knew the desperation was seeping through. Next, I called Mark. "Hey, have you heard from Alex today?" I asked, attempting to sound casual. "Not since yesterday," Mark replied. "Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "He wasn't home this morning, and I can't reach him." "That's odd," he said thoughtfully. "He did mention he was feeling a bit overwhelmed with work. Maybe he just needed some time alone?" "Maybe," I echoed, though it did little to ease my concern. "Let me know if you hear from him." Returning to my desk, I stared blankly at my computer screen. The hours crawled by, each one amplifying my unease. When evening came, I decided to head home early. The apartment was just as I'd left it, no signs of Alex's return. His shoes were still by the door, his keys absent from the bowl where he usually tossed them. I checked our shared calendar, emails, even his social media accounts for any hint of where he might be. Nothing. I heated up leftovers for dinner, but found I had no appetite. Pushing the food around my plate, I replayed our last conversation in my mind. Was there something I'd missed? A clue or a sign that he was planning to go somewhere? The second night without him was worse than the first. Sleep was elusive, my mind conjuring worst-case scenarios. What if he'd been in an accident? I called local hospitals, but found no records of him. At dawn, I decided it was time to involve the authorities. At the police station, I filed a missing person report. The officer was polite but noncommittal. "Adults have the right to disappear if they choose," he explained. "But we'll keep an eye out and let you know if we find anything." Leaving the station, a sense of helplessness washed over me. I felt like I was drifting in a sea of uncertainty, grasping for anything solid. Back at home, I sat on the couch, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, photos from vacations, the throw blanket we both loved, his favorite mug still sitting on the coffee table. Desperate for answers, I decided to check our bank accounts. Logging into our joint account, I scanned through recent transactions. My heart skipped a beat when I noticed several large withdrawals over the past few days, totaling nearly $100,000. The funds were transferred to an account I didn't recognize. A mix of confusion and betrayal surged through me. Why would Alex move such a significant amount of money without telling me? We made all major financial decisions together. This was our savings, meant for the house we'd planned to buy, the future we'd envisioned. I called the bank immediately. After navigating through automated menus, I reached a representative. "There's been unauthorized activity on my account," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. After verifying my identity, the representative replied, "I'm sorry to hear that. We can file a dispute, but the transfers were authorized using the correct credentials. Can you tell me where the money was transferred?" I asked urgently. "Due to privacy laws, I can't disclose the recipient's details unless there's a legal directive," she replied apologetically. Frustration bubbled up inside me. "But it's my account too," I insisted. "I understand, ma'am, but the policy is in place to protect all our customers." I hung up, feeling more lost than ever. Not only was Alex missing, but now our savings were gone, and I had no explanation for either. I reached out to his sister, Rachel. "Have you heard from Alex?" I asked, hoping she might have some insight. "No, I haven't," she said, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure. He hasn't been home for 2 days, and I found out he moved a large sum of money from our account." There was a pause. "That doesn't sound like him," Rachel said thoughtfully. "He seemed fine when we spoke last week." "Have you told the police?" "Yes, but they haven't found anything yet." "I'm coming over," she said firmly. An hour later, Rachel arrived. We sat together, going over everything I knew. She was as baffled as I was. "I can't imagine he'd just leave without saying anything," she said. "And taking the money, it doesn't add up." We decided to search through his home office for any clues. As we sifted through papers and drawers, we found nothing unusual, no hidden notes or suspicious documents. It was as if he'd simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. That evening, Mark called. "I haven't been able to reach Alex, but I did hear from a mutual acquaintance that his startup deal fell through," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart sinking. Apparently, the investors backed out at the last minute. It was a significant setback. I closed my eyes, pieces beginning to fit together. The stress he'd been under, his uncharacteristic behavior, it all pointed to this. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. "Maybe he was embarrassed or didn't want to worry you," Mark suggested gently. Rachel put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We'll figure this out," she assured me. Over the next few days, I oscillated between anger and concern. Part of me was furious that Alex had kept such important information from me, that he'd possibly jeopardized our financial security without so much as a conversation. Another part of me was worried that he might be in a state of distress, feeling unable to face me or anyone else. I began reaching out to shelters, hotels, any place he might have gone. Each call ended the same way: no one had seen or heard from him. The police had no updates, and I felt increasingly helpless. One afternoon, I received a plain envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter from Alex. "Emily, I'm sorry for leaving without explaining. I know you must be hurt and confused. Things haven't been going well with the business. I made some bad decisions, took risks that didn't pay off. I didn't want to burden you with my failures. I took the money to cover debts and obligations. I know it's not fair to you, and I can't express how sorry I am. Please don't look for me. I need to sort things out on my own. Take care of yourself. Alex. I read the letter multiple times, emotions swirling, relief that he was alive, anger at his actions, and deep sadness for the situation. Rachel sat beside me, reading over my shoulder. I can't believe he would do this, I said, my voice shaking. He should have talked to you, she agreed. But at least now you know he's alive. I nodded, clutching the letter. I just don't understand why he felt he couldn't come to me. We were partners. In the days that followed, I began the process of picking up the pieces. I consulted a lawyer about the financial situation and what steps I could take to protect myself. Emotionally, I leaned on friends and family, allowing myself to grieve the relationship I thought I had. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the weight of betrayal felt too heavy to bear. But slowly, I started to find strength within myself. I focused on my work, finding solace in creativity. I reconnected with hobbies I'd neglected and spent time with people who uplifted me. One evening, as I watched the sunset over the water, I realized that while I couldn't control Alex's choices, I could choose how to move forward. I decided to forgive, not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only hold me back. I wrote him a letter, not knowing if he'd ever read it. Alex, I received your letter. While I'm hurt and disappointed, I hope you find the peace and clarity you're seeking. I wish you had trusted me enough to share your struggles. Despite everything, I hope you take care of yourself. Emily. I mailed it to the return address on the envelope, releasing a deep breath as I dropped it into the mailbox. Life continued, and so did I. The experience had changed me, but it didn't define me. I chose to see it as a chapter, a painful one, but also one that taught me about resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of open communication. As weeks turned into months, I found myself smiling again, genuinely. I didn't know what the future held, but I was confident in my ability to face it, come what may. The weeks following Alex's departure blurred into a haze of emotions, grief, anger, confusion. I immersed myself in work, trying to fill the void he left behind, but every project, every quiet moment, reminded me of him. Friends and family checked in regularly, their concern both comforting and suffocating. I appreciated their support, but what I needed were answers. One afternoon, as I was organizing files at the office, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitating for a moment, I answered. Hello? A pause. Then a man's voice, unfamiliar. Is this Emily Hart? Yes. Who is this? My name is David Turner. I believe you might have some information that could help both of us. I'm sorry, I don't understand. It's about Alex. My heart skipped a beat. What about him? Do you know where he is? Not exactly, but I think together we might be able to find him. Can we meet? Every instinct told me to be cautious. How do I know I can trust you? You don't, he admitted. But I have information about his business dealings that you might find valuable. I considered for a moment. All right. There's a cafe on 5th and Main. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. See you then? That night, sleep was elusive. Questions swirled in my mind. Who was David Turner? What did he know about Alex? Was this a step toward finding him, or was I getting involved in something dangerous? The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee did little to calm my nerves. I chose a table by the window, where I could see anyone approaching. At precisely 10 a.m., a tall man with sharp features entered, scanning the room before his eyes settled on me. "Emily," he asked, approaching my table. "David, I presume." He offered a tight smile and sat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." "Get to the point," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He nodded. I was a partner in Alex's startup. We were working on securing funding for our project. Everything was going well until a few weeks ago. What happened? Alex started acting strangely. He became secretive, missing meetings, not returning calls. Then I discovered significant sums of money being moved around without explanation. I felt a pang of déjà vu. He withdrew money from our joint account as well. David leaned forward. I believe Alex got involved with some unsavory individuals. People who promised quick funding but operate outside the law. A chill ran down my spine. Are you saying he's in danger? Possibly. Or he might have willingly joined them. Either way, I need to find him to resolve some outstanding issues. Something about his tone unsettled me. Why involve me? Because you're the only link I have left. I was hoping you might have heard from him or know where he might be. I shook my head. I haven't spoken to him since he left. Just a letter saying he was sorry. David studied me for a moment. If you do hear from him, please let me know. He slid a business card across the table. I'll think about it, I replied cautiously. As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to David than he was letting on. I decided to do some digging of my own. Back at home, I pulled out my laptop and started researching Alex's startup. Articles praised their innovative approach, but there was little about the people involved. I searched for David Turner and found mentions of him in connection to several businesses, some of which had been investigated for fraud. I called Mark. I think I might be in over my head, I confessed, explaining the meeting with David. Emily, you need to be careful, he warned. This guy sounds shady. I know. But if Alex is in trouble, maybe it's time to hire a professional, he suggested. A private investigator. That's not a bad idea. The next day, I met with a PI named Lisa Chen. She came highly recommended and had a reputation for being thorough. Tell me everything, she said, her eyes attentive. I recounted the events leading up to Alex's disappearance, including the withdrawal of funds, the letter, and the meeting with David. This David character seems suspicious, she noted. I'll look into him. Thank you, I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Over the next week, Lisa provided regular updates. David Turner isn't who he says he is, she revealed during one call. His real name is Daniel Torres. He's been implicated in several financial scams. My heart sank. So he might be responsible for Alex's disappearance? It's possible. Or at least connected. Then, a breakthrough. Lisa called me late one evening. I found Alex. What? Where is he? He's been staying at a motel on the outskirts of town. I have the address. A mix of relief and apprehension washed over me. I need to see him. I'll go with you, Lisa insisted. It might not be safe. We drove in silence, the city lights fading as we entered a more desolate area. The motel was run down, a flickering neon sign casting eerie shadows. We approached room 12, and I took a deep breath before knocking. After a moment, the door creaked open. Alex stood there, unshaven, eyes weary. Shock flashed across his face. Emily? What are you doing here? I could ask you the same, I replied, emotion choking my voice. He glanced at Lisa. Who's this? A friend, I said. Can we talk? He hesitated, but then stepped aside to let us in. The room was sparse, cluttered with papers and a laptop. Why did you leave? I asked, struggling to keep my composure. He sank onto the edge of the bed. I didn't want to drag you into this. Into what? Alex, you took our money and disappeared. I deserve an explanation. He rubbed his temples. I got involved with people I shouldn't have. It started as a way to secure funding for the startup, but it quickly spiraled out of control. Does this have to do with David Turner, or rather, Daniel Torres? Lisa interjected. Alex's head snapped up. How do you know that name? He's been looking for you, I said. Claiming you owe him. Fear flickered in his eyes. He's dangerous, Emily. You shouldn't be anywhere near him. Then help us understand what's going on, Lisa urged. Alex took a deep breath. Daniel approached me months ago, offering investment. I was desperate, the company was failing. At first, everything seemed legitimate. Then he asked me to move money through our accounts, launder funds from unknown sources. When I refused, he threatened me. Why didn't you come to me? I asked softly. I wanted to protect you. I thought if I disappeared, they'd leave you alone. I shook my head. You should have trusted me. We could have faced it together. He looked at me, regret etched on his face. I'm so sorry, Emily. Lisa stood. We need to go to the authorities. They'll protect you and help bring Daniel to justice. Alex hesitated. They have connections everywhere. I don't know who to trust. You can trust us, I said firmly. After a tense moment, he nodded. All right. The next few days were a whirlwind. We met with federal agents, who placed Alex under protective custody. They were already investigating Daniel's criminal network, and Alex's testimony could be crucial. Meanwhile, I tried to process everything. The relief of knowing Alex was safe battled with the hurt of his betrayal. We spent hours talking, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. One evening, sitting together in the safe house, I asked, "What happens now?" He sighed. "I have to testify. It might mean entering a witness protection program." The reality of his words sank in. "So you might have to leave again, for good?" He took my hand. "I don't want to lose you. But I understand if you can't forgive me." I looked into his eyes, seeing the man I fell in love with and the flaws that had led us here. "I won't pretend it will be easy," I said. "But I want to try." The weeks that followed were challenging. Legal proceedings moved forward, and Daniel's network began to unravel. Alex provided valuable information, and in return, the authorities offered leniency. Eventually, a plea deal was reached. Alex would serve a reduced sentence with the possibility of parole. It wasn't the ideal outcome, but it was a path toward redemption. On the day he was taken into custody, we shared a tearful goodbye. "I'll be waiting," I promised. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything." Life without him was difficult, but there was a sense of closure. I focused on healing, attending therapy, and reconnecting with friends. Mark and Rachel were pillars of support, helping me navigate the complex emotions. Months later, I visited Alex in prison. He looked healthier, more at peace. "I've been working on myself," he said. "I want to be the man you deserve." I smiled gently. "That's all I can ask." As I left, I felt a weight lift. The future was uncertain, but I was stronger than before. No matter what lay ahead, I knew I could face it. Back at home, I began painting again, a hobby I'd neglected. Each stroke of color was a step toward reclaiming myself. The canvas transformed into a reflection of my journey, pain, love, resilience. In time, I found forgiveness, not just for Alex, but for myself. I allowed hope to take root, believing that even from the darkest experiences, new beginnings could emerge. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. The initial whirlwind of emotions had subsided, leaving me with a quiet resilience I hadn't known I possessed. I continued my work at the design studio, pouring my energy into projects that challenged and inspired me. Each completed piece felt like a small victory, a step forward in reclaiming my sense of self. One crisp morning, I received a call from Lisa Chen. "Emily, I thought you'd want to know, Alex is eligible for parole next month," she informed me. I paused, the news stirring a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. "Thank you for letting me know," I replied softly. "How are you feeling about it?" she asked. "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to see him, to see how he's doing. Another part is afraid of reopening old wounds." "Take your time to decide," Lisa advised. "There's no right or wrong here." After we hung up, I sat by the window, watching the world go by. The thought of seeing Alex again brought back memories, some painful, others filled with warmth. I decided to reach out to Rachel, his sister, to share the news. "That's great to hear," Rachel said when I called. "He's been working hard to turn his life around." "Have you been in touch with him?" I asked. "Yes, we've exchanged letters," she replied. "He's expressed a lot of remorse and wants to make amends." Her words gave me a sense of comfort. Maybe it's time for me to reach out too. That evening, I composed a letter to Alex. Words flowed slowly at first, but soon I found myself writing freely. "Dear Alex, I heard about your upcoming parole hearing. I'm glad to know you're doing well. These past months have been a journey for me, filled with challenges and growth. I hope the same is true for you. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet when you're ready. Take care. Emily." I mailed the letter the next day, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Regardless of his response, I felt at peace with my decision. A couple of weeks later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Recognizing Alex's handwriting, I opened it with a mix of eagerness and apprehension. "Dear Emily, thank you for reaching out. Your letter meant more to me than I can express. I've thought about you every day, hoping you're finding happiness and healing. I'd like nothing more than to see you and talk in person. My parole hearing is next week, and if all goes well, I'll be released shortly after. Please let me know if you're still willing to meet. With gratitude. Alex. Reading his words, I felt a surge of emotions, relief, hope, and a touch of anxiety. I decided to be there for his hearing, wanting to support him in this pivotal moment. On the day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse early. The hallways were quiet, the air filled with a solemn tension. I spotted Rachel and waved. She embraced me warmly. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "Me too," I replied, taking a deep breath. We entered the hearing room and took our seats. When Alex was brought in, our eyes met briefly. He looked healthier, his posture confident yet humble. The proceedings began, and Alex spoke earnestly about his rehabilitation and his plans for the future. When it was time for character witnesses, Rachel stood first, speaking of his dedication to self-improvement and the positive changes she'd seen. Then, surprising myself, I decided to speak as well. I approached the podium, my heart pounding. "My name is Emily Hart," I began. "I've known Alex for several years. While his actions caused pain and confusion, I've also witnessed his capacity for growth and change. I believe he deserves the opportunity to continue rebuilding his life." After the hearing concluded, the board announced their decision to grant Alex parole. A sense of relief washed over me. As we exited the room, Alex approached me cautiously. "Thank you for being here," he said softly. I nodded, emotions swirling. "It's good to see you. Would you like to grab a coffee sometime?" he asked, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yes," I replied. "I think I'd like that." A few days later, we met at a quiet cafe overlooking the bay. The atmosphere was light, the scent of freshly baked pastries mingling with the salty sea air. We sat by the window, an awkward silence settling between us at first. "How have you been?" he asked. "Better," I answered honestly. "It's been a journey, but I'm finding my way." He nodded. "I'm glad. You deserve happiness." "And you?" I inquired. "How are you adjusting?" "One day at a time," he said. "I've been staying with Rachel, looking for work, attending counseling sessions. It's not easy, but I'm committed to making things right." I sipped my tea, contemplating my next words. "I appreciate that. I won't pretend that everything can go back to the way it was, but I'm open to seeing where this leads." He smiled gently. "I understand. I'm willing to put in the effort, whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, we met regularly. Sometimes we'd take walks in the park, other times we'd visit art galleries, rekindling shared interests that had long been neglected. Our conversations were candid, often delving into difficult topics. Trust was slowly being rebuilt, brick by brick. One afternoon, as we strolled along the waterfront, Alex turned to me. "I've been offered a job at a local nonprofit," he said. "They focus on community outreach and rehabilitation programs." "That's wonderful," I responded, genuinely happy for him. "I want to use my experiences to help others," he explained. "To make something positive out of my mistakes." I admired his determination. "I think that's a noble goal." He hesitated before speaking again. "Emily, I know I have no right to ask, but do you think there's a chance for us to be together again?" I looked out at the water, the sun casting shimmering patterns on the waves. I've thought about it a lot, I admitted. Part of me is afraid of being hurt again. He reached out, his fingers lightly brushing mine. I promise to be honest and open with you. No more secrets. I met his gaze. If we do this, it has to be a fresh start. We can't cling to the past, but we can learn from it. He nodded earnestly. Agreed. I want to build a future with you, one based on trust and mutual respect. A tentative smile formed on my lips. Then let's take it slow and see where it goes. Our relationship resumed cautiously, each of us mindful of the other's boundaries. We attended couples therapy, which provided a safe space to address lingering issues. Through open communication, we navigated the complexities of our past while fostering a healthier dynamic. One evening, as we cooked dinner together in my apartment, laughter filled the air. It felt comfortable, like rediscovering a favorite song from childhood. Remember when we tried to make paella and nearly set off the fire alarm? He chuckled. I laughed, shaking my head. How could I forget? We ended up ordering pizza. He grew serious for a moment. I've missed these simple moments with you. Me too, I admitted. As the months unfolded, our bond strengthened. There were challenges, of course, moments of doubt and fear, but we faced them together. Alex thrived in his new job, finding purpose in helping others avoid the pitfalls he'd encountered. I continued to grow professionally and personally, embracing new opportunities and friendships. One day, while hiking a favorite trail overlooking the city, Alex paused to take in the view. Life is unpredictable, he mused. But maybe that's what makes it beautiful. I smiled, squeezing his hand. Agreed. We've come a long way. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Thank you for giving us a second chance. Thank you for earning it, I replied. As we stood there, a sense of peace settled over me. The future remained uncertain, but I felt ready to embrace it, grateful for the journey that had led us here and hopeful for what lay ahead. The gentle hum of the coffee shop provided a comforting backdrop as I sat across from Alex. It was our first meeting since deciding to give our relationship another chance. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of rain from outside, creating a nostalgic atmosphere that reminded me of earlier, simpler times. Yet, beneath the surface, tension lingered, a silent acknowledgement of the challenges we still faced. How was your day? I asked, stirring my latte absent-mindedly. He offered a small smile. Productive. We started a new outreach program at the nonprofit. It's rewarding to see the immediate impact on people's lives. That's wonderful, I replied genuinely. You're making a real difference. He looked down at his cup. It's the least I can do, considering everything that's happened. I reached out to touch his hand. Alex, we've been over this. You're taking responsibility and making amends. That's important. He met my gaze, gratitude shining in his eyes. I don't know what I'd do without your support. Our conversation drifted to lighter topics, the latest book I was reading, a new art exhibit in town, but an undercurrent of unresolved issues remained. As the evening wore on, I realized that despite our efforts, a barrier persisted between us. A few days later, we attended a friend's wedding together. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and joyful celebrations. Watching the couple dance their first dance, I felt a pang of melancholy. Once upon a time, Alex and I had envisioned a similar future. Now, that dream seemed distant. On the drive home, silence enveloped us. Finally, Alex spoke. Seeing them so happy, it makes me wonder if we'll ever get back to that place. I sighed softly. I've been thinking about that too. I want to believe we can, but sometimes I feel like we're forcing something that's no longer there. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Do you think we're making a mistake? I'm not sure, I admitted. Maybe we need to reevaluate what we really want. Over the next few weeks, the cracks in our relationship became more apparent. Small disagreements escalated into arguments. Old wounds resurfaced, and trust proved harder to rebuild than either of us anticipated. One evening, after a particularly heated discussion about finances and future plans, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the room thick with unspoken words. Emily, I feel like we're going in circles, Alex said wearily. Maybe we're not ready to move forward. Tears welled in my eyes. I don't want to give up on us, but I can't ignore the constant tension. He nodded slowly. Perhaps we need time apart to heal individually. The weight of his words settled heavily between us. Are you suggesting we break up? I asked softly. Not necessarily forever, he replied. But maybe a separation would help us gain clarity. I looked away, struggling to process the idea. Part of me knew he was right. Despite our best efforts, we hadn't fully addressed the underlying issues that plagued our relationship. Maybe you're right, I whispered. Perhaps some space would be best. We discussed the logistics. Alex would stay with his sister for a while, and we'd limit contact to give ourselves time to reflect. It was a painful decision, but one we both felt was necessary. The next morning, I watched as he packed a small suitcase. The reality of the situation hit me hard. I hope this isn't goodbye forever, I said, my voice trembling. He embraced me gently. I hope so too. No matter what happens, you'll always mean the world to me. After he left, the apartment felt emptier than ever. The silence was deafening, and the familiar surroundings seemed foreign without his presence. I wandered from room to room, memories flooding back, shared laughter, whispered conversations, moments of comfort and joy. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work and hobbies. I joined a local art class, finding solace in painting and creative expression. Friends reached out, offering support and companionship. Yet, despite the distractions, a lingering sadness persisted. One afternoon, Rachel called. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. "I'm managing," I replied. "It's been difficult, but I'm trying to focus on myself." "That's good to hear," she said. "I know Alex is struggling too. He talks about you often." A mix of emotions surged within me. "I hope he's okay." "He is," she assured me. "Maybe this time apart will be beneficial for both of you." As weeks turned into a month, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been overshadowed. I attended workshops, reconnected with old friends, and even took a weekend trip to the mountains, a place I'd always wanted to visit but never found the time. One evening, while sorting through a box of old photographs, I stumbled upon a picture of Alex and me from our first anniversary. We were at the beach, sun-kissed and smiling broadly. Looking at the photo, I felt a mixture of fondness and sorrow. Deciding it was time to gain closure, I penned a letter to Alex. Dear Alex, I hope this letter finds you well. Our time apart has given me space to reflect deeply on our relationship and my own needs. I've realized that while we shared many beautiful moments, we've both grown and changed in ways that may not align anymore. I cherish the memories we've made, but I think it's best if we both move forward separately. This isn't a decision I've made lightly, but one I believe is best for our individual happiness. I wish you all the best in your journey. Warm regards. Emily. After sending the letter, a sense of finality settled in. It was painful, but also liberating. I knew in my heart that letting go was the right choice. A few days later, Alex requested to meet. We agreed to meet at a quiet park near the river, a place we both loved. As we sat on a bench overlooking the water, he handed me a letter in return. I received your letter, he began. While it's hard to accept, I understand and respect your decision. I'm sorry, I said softly. I never wanted to hurt you. He shook his head. You don't need to apologize. This time apart has shown me that I have more personal growth to do. I want you to be happy, even if that means we're not together. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of orange and pink. Do you remember when we used to come here and dream about the future? He asked nostalgically. I do, I replied, smiling faintly. Those were good times. They were, he agreed. Thank you for the memories. Thank you, I echoed. As we parted ways, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. It was the end of a significant chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new one. In the following weeks, I focused on embracing my independence. I moved to a new apartment, one that reflected my personal style and aspirations. I continued to grow professionally, taking on projects that challenged and excited me. One day, while attending an art exhibit, I met someone new, a fellow artist named Daniel. We struck up a conversation about the paintings, finding common ground in our appreciation for abstract expressionism. There was an ease to our interaction that felt refreshing. As we exchanged contact information, I realized that I was open to new possibilities. The painful separation from Alex had taught me valuable lessons about myself, what I wanted in a relationship, and the importance of self-love and boundaries. Reflecting on the journey, I acknowledged that while the ending with Alex was bittersweet, it was also a catalyst for personal growth. I was grateful for the experiences we shared and the lessons learned. Life continued, filled with new adventures and relationships. The future was uncertain, but I felt ready to embrace it with optimism and confidence. The warm glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the art studio, casting vibrant hues across the canvases that adorned the walls. I stood before my latest piece, a swirling abstract that captured the tumultuous journey of my past year. Colors melded and clashed, deep blues of melancholy blending with the fiery reds of passion and the soft greens of renewal. Painting had become not just a hobby but a form of therapy, a way to process the complex emotions that lingered after my separation from Alex. That's a powerful piece, a familiar voice remarked. I turned to see Daniel approaching, his eyes reflecting genuine admiration. Thanks, I replied with a smile. It's been a work in progress for a while. He nodded thoughtfully. Art has a way of revealing truths we might not even be aware of. Very true, I agreed. It's been helpful in navigating some personal reflections. Over the past few months, Daniel and I had grown closer. Our initial connection at the art exhibit blossomed into a friendship built on shared interests and mutual respect. We often spent hours discussing art, philosophy, and life over coffee at the quaint cafe near the studio. "Are you free this evening?" he asked. "There's a jazz quartet playing at the park." I thought it might be inspiring. I considered the invitation. "That sounds lovely. I'd love to join you." As the evening unfolded, the soothing melodies of jazz filled the air, intertwining with the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. We sat on a blanket under the starlit sky, the atmosphere both relaxing and invigorating. "Do you ever think about how far you've come?" Daniel asked suddenly, his gaze fixed on the performers. I pondered his question. "Sometimes. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to appreciate personal growth." He turned to face me. "From what you've shared, it seems like you've navigated some significant challenges with grace." I smiled softly. "Thank you. It's been a journey of self-discovery. I've learned a lot about what I want and deserve." "Care to share any insights?" he prompted gently. I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. "Well, I've realized the importance of setting boundaries and prioritizing my well-being. In the past, I often compromised my needs to accommodate others, but I've learned that a healthy relationship requires balance and mutual respect." He nodded. "That's a valuable lesson. Self-care is crucial." "Absolutely," I agreed. "I've also come to appreciate the value of open communication. Avoiding difficult conversations only leads to misunderstandings and resentment." Daniel smiled. "Wise words. It seems you've gained a lot of clarity." "I have," I admitted. "And I'm grateful for the experiences that led me here, even the challenging ones." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, delving into personal philosophies and future aspirations. I felt a sense of peace and contentment, a stark contrast to the emotional turbulence of the previous year. As the concert concluded, we strolled leisurely along the park's winding paths. The moon cast a gentle glow, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," I said sincerely. "The pleasure is all mine," Daniel replied. "I enjoy our conversations. You have a depth that's rare." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "You're too kind." He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Emily, I value our friendship deeply, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something more." My heart skipped a beat. "Daniel." He raised a hand gently. "There's no pressure. I just wanted to be honest about my feelings." I appreciated his candor. "I care about you too," I confessed. "But I want to take things slow. I need to be sure I'm ready before embarking on something new." He smiled warmly. "I understand completely. Let's continue enjoying each other's company and see where it leads." Relief washed over me. "Thank you for being so understanding." In the weeks that followed, Daniel and I continued to spend time together, our bond strengthening organically. I remained mindful of maintaining balance, ensuring that I nurtured my own interests and needs while exploring this new connection. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Alex. His name flashing on my phone screen stirred a mix of emotions. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hello, Alex." "Hi, Emily," he greeted, his tone tentative. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all. How are you?" "I'm doing well," he replied. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "I'm good, thank you. Focusing on my art and spending time with friends." "That's great to hear," he said sincerely. "I wanted to let you know that I've accepted a job offer out of state. It's a fresh start." Surprise flickered through me. "Oh. Where are you headed?" "Denver," he revealed. "I'll be working with a nonprofit there, similar to what I was doing here." "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity." He paused before continuing. "I also wanted to apologize again for everything. Our time apart helped me realize how much I needed to grow. You've been a significant part of my life, and I wanted to thank you for the lessons learned." Emotion swelled within me. "I appreciate that, Alex. I truly wish you all the best." "Same to you," he replied softly. "Take care, Emily." As the call ended, I felt a sense of closure. It was as if a chapter had gently been brought to a close, allowing me to fully embrace the present and future. That evening, I met with my close friend Sarah at our favorite bistro. Over glasses of wine and delicious cuisine, we caught up on life. "You seem happier," she observed, her eyes reflecting warmth. "I feel happier," I acknowledged. "It's amazing what self-reflection and allowing oneself to heal can do." She raised her glass in a toast. "To growth and new beginnings." "Cheers to that," I agreed, clinking my glass against hers. As the weeks turned into months, my life settled into a harmonious rhythm. Daniel and I grew closer, our relationship built on a foundation of friendship, mutual respect, and clear communication. I continued to pursue my passions, participating in art exhibitions and even selling a few pieces. One day, while organizing my studio, I came across a journal I'd kept during my time with Alex. Flipping through the pages, I read entries filled with hope, confusion, pain, and ultimately, acceptance. It was a testament to my journey, a reminder of how far I'd come. I decided to start a new journal, one that reflected my current state of mind. On the first page, I wrote, "Lessons learned. Self-worth is not determined by others' perceptions or actions. Open communication is essential for healthy relationships. Personal growth often comes from overcoming challenges. It's okay to let go of what no longer serves you. Embracing vulnerability can lead to deeper connections. Happiness comes from within and is nurtured by self-care. Every ending is an opportunity for a new beginning." Writing these affirmations solidified my commitment to living authentically and embracing the journey ahead. One evening, Daniel surprised me with tickets to a renowned art festival in a nearby city. As we explored the vibrant displays and installations, I felt inspired by the creativity and passion surrounding us. "Thank you for bringing me here," I said, squeezing his hand. "There's no one else I'd rather share this with," he replied warmly. As we stood before a stunning mural depicting a phoenix rising from the ashes, I reflected on the symbolism. Like the mythical creature, I had emerged from the challenges of my past stronger and more self-aware. "Life truly is a series of rebirths," I mused aloud. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "And each one brings us closer to who we're meant to be." I turned to face him. "I'm grateful for where I am now, for the experiences that have shaped me and the people who've walked alongside me." He smiled softly. "I'm grateful too. Under the canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by art that celebrated the human spirit, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The lessons I'd learned were not just about relationships, but about embracing life's complexities with resilience and grace. As the festival concluded, we made our way back home, the night air filled with the promise of new adventures. I knew there would be challenges ahead, life was unpredictable, after all, but I felt equipped to face them with optimism and wisdom. In the quiet moments before sleep that night, I reflected on my journey. The painful experiences had been transformative, teaching me invaluable lessons about love, trust, and self-worth. I drifted into a peaceful slumber, hopeful for what the future would bring. Spring arrived in a cascade of blossoms and gentle breezes, infusing the city with a renewed sense of life. I found myself embracing the season's energy, eager to explore the possibilities that lay ahead. My art had gained recognition, and I was invited to host my first solo exhibition at a prestigious gallery downtown. The prospect was both exhilarating and daunting. On the morning of the exhibition, I stood in the gallery before my collection, a series titled Resilience. Each piece was a reflection of my journey, abstract interpretations of love, loss, healing, and growth. The vibrant colors and bold strokes conveyed emotions that words often failed to capture. Guests began to arrive, their murmurs filling the space. Among them were friends, family, colleagues, and new acquaintances who had been drawn by the buzz surrounding the event. Daniel arrived early, offering a reassuring smile as he approached. "You've outdone yourself," he said warmly. "The pieces are incredible." "Thank you," I replied, my nerves settling slightly. "I couldn't have done it without your support." He glanced around the room. "This is your moment. Enjoy it." As the evening progressed, I engaged with attendees who shared their interpretations of my work. Their insights were enlightening, offering perspectives I hadn't considered. One woman, an art critic for a well-known publication, approached me with enthusiasm. "Your use of color is both bold and evocative," she remarked. "There's a depth to your work that resonates on a personal level." "I'm glad it speaks to you," I responded. "Art has been a powerful outlet for me." She smiled. "I look forward to featuring you in our next issue." The prospect of increased exposure was thrilling. I felt a sense of affirmation that I was on the right path. Later in the evening, as the crowd began to thin, I stepped outside for a moment of solitude. The cool night air was refreshing against my skin. I took a deep breath, reflecting on how much had changed over the past year. "Mind if I join you?" Daniel's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Not at all," I said, grateful for his presence. He handed me a glass of champagne. "To celebrate your success." We clinked glasses, and I took a sip, savoring the effervescence. "It's been quite a journey to get here." He nodded. "You've worked hard and stayed true to yourself. You deserve all of this and more." I glanced up at the stars scattered across the night sky. There were times I wasn't sure I'd find happiness again. Daniel's gaze was steady. "And now?" "Now I feel hopeful," I admitted. "Content with who I am and excited for what's to come." He hesitated before speaking. "Emily, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." I turned to face him, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "These past months with you have been incredible. I've cherished every moment we've spent together. I know we agreed to take things slow, but I want you to know that I'm ready for more." Emotion welled within me. Daniel. He held up a hand gently. No pressure. I just needed to express how I feel. I respect whatever pace you're comfortable with. I smiled softly. Thank you for your honesty. I care about you deeply, and I feel the same way. I wanted to be sure I was ready before taking the next step. Relief and joy spread across his face. So, where do we go from here? Forward, I replied confidently. Together. We shared a quiet moment, the understanding between us deepening. It felt right, natural, and unforced. Rejoining the remaining guests, I felt lighter, buoyed by the possibilities of both my personal and professional life. Sarah approached me with a mischievous grin. Looks like things are going well, she teased, nodding toward Daniel. I laughed. They are. I'm happy. I'm glad to hear it, she said sincerely. You deserve this. As the night drew to a close, I took a final walk through the gallery, absorbing the atmosphere. The event had been a success, and I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Over the following weeks, opportunities continued to unfold. The art critics feature brought increased attention, leading to invitations to participate in international exhibitions. I began planning a trip to Europe to explore the art scenes of Paris, Berlin, and Florence. One evening, over dinner, I shared my plans with Daniel. I've been invited to showcase my work abroad, I explained excitedly. It's a fantastic opportunity. That's amazing, he responded enthusiastically. When do you leave? In 2 months, I replied. I'll be gone for several weeks. He considered this. I'd love to join you, if you'd like the company. I was hoping you'd say that, I admitted. It would be wonderful to share the experience with you. We began making arrangements, the prospect of traveling together adding a new layer of excitement. As the departure date approached, I found myself reflecting on the twists and turns that had led me here. One afternoon, while packing, I received an unexpected email from Alex. It was brief, conveying well wishes and congratulations on my recent successes. He mentioned seeing the feature in the art publication and expressed happiness that I was thriving. I sat for a moment, contemplating how to respond. In the end, I sent a short reply thanking him and wishing him well. It felt like the final thread tying me to the past had gently been released. Our journey through Europe was everything I'd hoped for and more. The richness of the cultures, the history, and the art filled me with inspiration. Daniel and I grew closer, our relationship strengthening as we navigated new experiences together. One evening in Florence, as we watched the sunset from a hillside overlooking the city, Daniel took my hand. Being here with you has been incredible, he said softly. It has, I agreed, my heart full. He looked into my eyes. I love you, Emily. The words hung in the air, sincere and unassuming. I felt a warmth spread through me. I love you too, Daniel. We embraced, the world around us fading as we shared the moment. Returning home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I dove into my art with vigor, channeling the experiences and emotions from our travels into new creations. My work continued to evolve, reflecting the growth I'd undergone personally and artistically. One day, while organizing my studio, I came across the Resilience series from my earlier exhibition. Looking at the pieces, I felt a sense of gratitude for the challenges I'd faced, the lessons learned, and the strength I'd gained. Life settled into a fulfilling rhythm. Daniel and I moved in together, creating a home filled with love, laughter, and mutual support. I continued to nurture my friendships, valuing the connections that had sustained me. As time passed, I occasionally thought of Alex, hoping that he too had found peace and happiness. Our paths had diverged, but the experiences we'd shared were a part of the tapestry of my life. One sunny afternoon, while strolling through the park where I'd once sought solace, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. I realized that moving forward wasn't just about leaving the past behind, but integrating it into who I had become. I sat on a bench, watching children play and families enjoy the day. A sense of contentment washed over me. I was no longer defined by past hardships, but enriched by them. Daniel joined me, offering an ice cream cone with a grin. "Penny for your thoughts?" I took the cone, smiling. "Just thinking about how grateful I am for everything." He sat beside me. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it?" "It does," I agreed. "And I wouldn't have it any other way." We sat in comfortable silence, savoring the simple joy of the moment. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, I felt a deep sense of peace. The future was an open canvas, and I was eager to continue painting the story of my life, with all its colors, textures, and layers. I had moved forward, not by forgetting the past, but by embracing it as part of my journey. And in doing so, I'd found happiness, love, and a profound appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit.